Hello world, welcome to the Beginning Gardening Series video number 3. Today we will be talking about sun exposure and which vegetables produce in each category and why it is important to understand sun exposure. First, before we get started, let's 1, acknowledge the dope whiteboard, 2, acknowledge the super dope crop swap anarchy tee, and 3, I know you guys hear me clearly now with that microphone. All right, so we're going to get started talking about why it is important to understand sun exposure. Magic word is photosynthesis, all right? Now, every crop or every plant has a preference, whether it's full sun down to shade, okay? And let's just say the amount of light that is received during this time by the plant is directly related to its ability to produce food for itself. That is through the process of photosynthesis. Now you'll also find out that photosynthesis is directly related to a plant's health and vigor. All right, so let's say plants like tomatoes or peppers that prefer full sun, if you plant them in an area where they are receiving less than their ideal amount of sun, you plant them in an area where they're only getting 2 to 4 hours of sun in partial shade, then you will notice that they are more susceptible to diseases and pests. So that's why it's very important to understand which crop, which plant goes into which category, and make sure that each one of those plants is receiving the ideal amount of light. So, we're going to get started with full sun. Full sun is anything that is described as receiving more than 6 hours of direct sun. When we talk about full sun and how they like 6+ hours of sun, I am not saying that they need 6 continuous hours of sun. So they don't need sun from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. uninterrupted. No, you can get sun in blocks, okay? So you could get 2 to 3 hours in the morning, you could get 2 to 3 more hours around the lunchtime area, and 2 to 3 more hours at the evening, afternoon, nighttime area, nighttime, and you will have achieved your goal of getting 6+ hours of direct sun. You'll notice that the plants in this category, in the full sun category, are the ones that produce the fruits. Okay, so this is where you find all of your fruit trees. This is where you find things like your watermelons, your squash, your tomatoes, your peppers, your corn, anything like that that needs a lot of sun for it to produce the big fruits. They're in the full sun category. What you find out about this category is that these plants cannot receive too much sun. So if it were to get sun 14 hours a day, hey, they're not going to complain. They love the sun. They're soaking it up. Next, we're going to get to the partial sun category. All right, so depending on who you talk to or what you search on Google or which nursery, which plant company puts a tag in the plant, you'll see the terms partial sun and partial shade. Sometimes these terms are interchangeable with, I guess, with the nurseries and stuff. Sometimes these terms are interchangeable. I like to differentiate between the two. So I say that partial sun is between 4 to 6 hours of direct sun, while partial shade is between 2 to 4 hours of direct sun. A lot of the same plants grow in this category, in both categories, I should say. So this is where you find things like your cole crops, so your broccolis, your cauliflowers, a lot of your root crops, your beets, your radishes, your carrots, your horseradish, your peas. Even though peas are also in the full sun category, they can also grow well over here in the partial sun category. This is where you find leafy greens. So I know a lot of people might tell you that leafy greens go over here in full sun, they need a lot of sun. Yes, they can grow and produce in the full sun category, but I've always noticed that I get a better flavor from things like lettuce and kale and Swiss chard whenever I plant them in an area where they're in partial sun or in an area where they are receiving filtered light. I'm talking about light that is not directly on the plant. So if we could imagine a forest, or if you could imagine growing something like okra, a tall plant in your bed, and then planting the leafy greens underneath it so that the sun is going through the leaves of the okra, or going through the gaps between the leaves of the okra and making its way down to the lettuce underneath. Like I said, I found that I receive a better flavor in the crops, the lettuces and things, whenever I plant them in partial sun or filtered sun. Now, I said that a lot of these plants grow in both of these categories, but things like carrots and peas and radishes, they're not necessarily going to produce if they're down here getting less than 4 hours of sun. Okay, so some of these need the 4 to 6, but they could technically grow over here because you can get to that 4-hour range over there. And next we're going to get to the shade category. Now, you're not going to find a lot of plants, you're not going to find any vegetables that thrive or grow well in the shade category, but there are still plants that can grow and do their thing. And just because it's in a shaded area does not mean all you can plant are ferns or things that might not ever produce flowers or be colorful. No, there are plenty of plants that produce flowers and are colorful that grow in a shade category. This Persian shield, that's actually one of my favorite plants ever, and it grows extremely well in shade. Things like hydrangeas grow well in shaded areas, and things like wild ginger grow well in shaded areas. All right, so like I said, like I do in all my videos, I'm just briefly touching on each one of these topics. For a more in-depth write-up, you can go to the blog over at bigcitygardener.com, or you can click the link in the bio and it'll take you right there. When you get to the website, why not sign up for the newsletter? We call it Garden Notes, and it goes out weekly. In there, you'll find gardening tips, you'll find write-ups on plants that I think are super dope, and you'll even get some recipes. And hopefully the information that you find in the blogs and in these videos helps you feel more confident to be able to get out in the garden and just grow it. Get your hands dirty. All right?